Been thinking recently, when was it that I stopped giving a f***? Today I'm talking about something that many in our 50s or approaching that glorious big 50 milestone can deeply relate to. It's a kind of superpower that just kicks in. You know, there's this peculiar moment you're struggling to read the instructions on the medication that you've got, which of course now you take on a regular basis, and you think it's some kind of conspiracy that manufacturers are just making the typeface smaller. No, you need glasses. It's a stark reminder that the world is literally becoming a blur, and I don't mean part life. But here's the thing, it's not just about the physical markers of aging that you're beginning to notice. There is also a mental change. And I don't mean you regularly forget where you put your keys. No, a change in what genuinely manages to rattle your cage nowadays, or basically just piss you off. For us Gen Xers, those famously adrift, apathetic and cynical souls, hitting 50 or coming into your 50s, it's akin to unlocking a new level in the grand, often bewildering game of life. Xbox achievement unlocked. Level 50, level up. That's why this channel's called Level 50. Which reminds me, if I could just borrow a moment of your time, I noticed that 82% of people who watch my videos on a regular basis aren't yet subscribed. And if you're new here as well, it would really, really help. So I ask you kindly, if you could hit that subscribe button, toggle that notification bell, then that way you'll know when I upload videos like that, and it will really help the channel, so I appreciate it. Anyway, back to the superpower. So guess what that power up is? It's a significantly reduced capacity to care about the inconsequential. This new profound state is called the art of not giving a f*** about the right things. And it's famously encapsulated in the book by Mark Manson here. Interesting read. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't an invitation to descend into a state of nihilistic apathy, giving the bird to the world and his wife. Rather, it's more about a deliberate, artful practice of selective indifference. It involves a kind of conscious reallocation of those finite reserves of concern, you know, those precious few f***s that you have, towards pursuits that genuinely and actually enrich your existence. Life is too short, you know what I mean? This isn't a philosophy that you stumble upon overnight. It's a skill painstakingly honed over decades of navigating life's absurdities, triumphs, and facepalms. After all, we've lived life to experience it in all its glorious forms. Jobs, sackings, career upheaval, relationships, divorce, kids, the works. We're the generation that came through economic recessions, AIDS, the downfall of the Berlin Wall, the rise of MTV, the introduction of the internet, social media. To put it mildly, we've seen some stuff. This accumulated experience has simply led to kind of collective exhaustion with the trivial. The wisdom of knowing what battles are actually worth fighting for and which are best met with a world-weary shrug and like, whatevs, whatever. When we look back, think about all the things that we used to lose sleep over. Embarking on a journey back to our worries of our 20s and 30s and maybe our 40s can be like visiting a museum of anxieties, some cringeworthy, some hilariously earnest and embarrassing in retrospect. This worry museum, let's call it that, a worry museum, is filled with exhibits that now seem almost quaint, stupefyingly ridiculous, given the perspective that age and experience now affords us. I'm embarrassed to admit, many of the following things I'm about to talk to, I absolutely bought into. I was one of those idiots. A prominent display in this museum of hangups that we put too much emphasis on would undoubtedly be dedicated to career climbs and corporate games and trying to climb the greasy pole. Remember that kind of relentless pressure to ascend the corporate ladder. You weren't anybody if you weren't getting those promotions. Navigating the treacherous waters of office politics, securing that elusive promotion, to be seen to be really giving a shit about the latest quarterly report, the latest strategy, the latest deck. As if what we were doing was actually changing the fate of the universe, when in fact all we were doing were deciding whether we should have blue widgets or red widgets. so much time microscopically analysing spreadsheets, and in the end, none of it really mattered. So some of us, it was the fight for the corner office, the right connections, that meticulously crafted 5-year career plan. These were the idols of whose altar many a youthful ambition was sacrificed. Yeah, we worked late in the office to appear to be committed to the cause. We missed our kids' bedtimes. We missed seeing them grow up. And all for what? I mean, I for certainly made sure that wasn't a part of my life as best I could. But sure, I still suffered from working late at the office or cancelled trains, which meant I didn't get home until gone 10 or 11 at night. We were contracted for 35 hours. And yet when you factor in the commute, which you should do, because I saw these people working on spreadsheets in the morning and PowerPoints in the evening on the train on the way back, they were doing 60+ hour weeks and yet only being paid for the 35 hours. So much that they bought in to the kind of the god of career. Next up, tracing the trends. Oh, the sartorial choices we made. Thank God we didn't have smartphones and we just relied on those 24 prints that were produced at Boots. Yeah, the only evidence being the odd holiday photo. When I was 16, the slightly posher boys in the town all went to the posh grammar school, and they were all super cool, into the Smiths and Echo and the Bunnymen, wearing their kind of second-hand charity shop coats and all with flat tops and stuff like that. I went to the local comprehensive, and there they were all casuals, into the Jam and maybe Ticini tracksuit tops or Farah slacks. But I wanted to be like the cool indie kids from the grammar school. So I went to my mum's hairdresser to ask for a flat top. Let's just say they didn't really have the equipment to kind of do that. And I ended up coming out looking like Beaker from the Muppets. Anyway, I had to go to school like that. And then, of course, there was the whole anxiety of not having the right brands. Haha, look at the pound shop kid in his British Knights trainers, yeah. No Air Jordans for me. The obsession of these right brands, the right kind of brands, to be seen wearing the right thing, that followed us through life, not just clothing, it followed us through stuff. I remember when I had young kids, there was always some mother who kind of dressed their kid in head to foot in Burberry or something. And you think that outfit is literally going to last about a day. And it wasn't just that, it was also about having the right pram or the right pushchair. You know, it had to be the Baby Bjorn or the Stokey, you know, some Scandinavian design thing. Sometimes I used to hang out with other fathers. We used to stand around discussing the latest prams as though they were supercars. Oh yeah, this one's got 4-wheel drive and rear-wheel suspension. I could collapse it with one move. And then, of course, it was cars. Be seen to be having the right car on your drive. Or, as I say, pulling up to those friends and family gatherings to sort of say, oh, look at me, I'm successful. And then, of course, it moves into tech as well, doesn't it? Oh, you've got to have the right phone. You've got to upgrade your tech every so often. How old's that telly? What, 2 years old? You need a new telly, mate. I remember my parents' telly was about 20 years old. And the same with phones. This idea that you've got to upgrade your iPhone every year. For what? They're still 3 years behind Android, let's be honest. All this stuff, the right tech, the kids dressed up in designer gear, the right kind of car on your driveway. These material possessions were often seen as markers of success and, by extension, your own personal worth. And we would flaunt them. But for what? For why? For whom? We never stopped to question, did we? We just were whipped up in this bubble of affluenza, which was a term coined by Dr. Oliver Sacks, about this kind of Western, English-speaking Western obsession with keeping up with the Joneses that ultimately leads to massive anxiety and stress. Now, any Gen X Worry Museum would not be complete without a section of peer approval and social standing. Oh my God, the weight of what everyone else thought felt immense. The fear of being deemed uncool, of missing out on the right party, the concert, or the crucial social gathering. I can almost remember a time in my late 20s where I felt really comfortable in who I was and what I wore and the clothes and my designer choices. I used to get complimented in the street and stuff. I once got stopped in the street by casting agents because they wanted me to be in their next pop video. That is not a joke, and it is true, and the evidence is out there on YouTube. Anyway, the point is, I was very comfortable who I was. I seemed to be within the in crowd. It felt good. My life felt like a movie. When I walked into a nightclub, it was the right nightclub. When I went out to the parties, they were the right parties. Yeah, I sort of kidded myself I was in with the in crowd. But then life seems to get a bit serious, especially with relationships. And suddenly those quirky, edges that made me feel cool or different or quirky, like a little bit eccentric, those edges were slowly chiseled off. And then it became, I bought you this nice polo shirt from M&S for when we go and meet the family. And it was like, yeah, great, put them with the others. No more dragon silk shirt for me. Talking of relationships, oh my gosh, the relationship drama, the dissecting of every he said, she said, agonizing over mixed signals and stuff. I mean, to be honest, that's not 100% gone, but I'd like to think we're much better at ignoring the trivial and focus on the important elements of relationship. This searching for the one, as depicted in countless John Hughes movies or rom-coms of the time, man, this sort of seemed to consume vast amounts of emotional energy. Culture sells us this idea that the one, the one that when you meet, bluebirds will start singing and all of that, and deer will start popping up from the forest. Let's be honest, hooking up for long-term relationships often just depends on your mental state at the time and what era of life you're in. Oh, time to settle down? You'll do. Oh, my biological clock is ticking? You'll do. That's kind of how relationships form, in my opinion. They sort of evolve, and then you're in the right place at the right time together. Maybe a bit cynical, a bit harsh. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Underpinning all these specific anxieties is the immense weight of social expectation. We internalise a barrage of messages about success, appearance, and what life timeline should look like. You should have done this by the time you're 30, this by the time you're 40. Have you got the right job? Have you got the right girlfriend? Have you got kids? Are you married? All of that kind of stuff. And then when we hit 40, we suddenly, especially men, we get super depressed because we don't think we've achieved anything because society said we should have achieved all of this. The bar was set unrealistically high. In my 20s, there was a prevalence of lads' mags about gorgeous women, hedonistic lifestyles, fancy cars, magazines like GQ, Maxim, Loaded, FM, with double-page adverts for £10,000 watches. And yeah, I was really fascinated by fancy watches. For my 40th, I bought myself a $3,000 Tag Heuer like Steve McQueen. Crazy. I still love watches, but now I just love one brand, G-Shock. £99, thank you very much. I think for Gen X women as well in particular, the promise that they could have it all, career, life and family, often translated into overwhelming pressure to juggle multiple demanding roles. There was intense drive among Gen Xers to establish careers and achieve financial stability. A bit like the previous generation, they seem to have had it all. In Japan, they had the bubble period of the 80s, and to quote Yaz, the only way is up. And then an economic crash followed. And that was what they called the lost decade of the 90s. I think in the West, we had our lost decades since the 2008 economic crash, and it's still lost. Has anybody seen our prosperity? Anybody? Anybody? Personal passions, creative pursuits, a more authentic lifestyle. All of this often put on hold for years in favour of perceived security and just staying afloat. Oh my God. I remember I had a good job, good wage. My partner was working, she had a good wage. And yet, we were whipped up and in this obsession of keeping up with the Joneses that we had so much stuff that we were paying for. Despite all that income, we were just treading water. We never had anything left at the end of the month. That's crazy now, especially when I think about what I live on now. The liberation experience after 50 and this accompanying not giving up attitude can be seen in part as a powerful reclaiming of that deferred life I was talking about. It's a rebellion against the pressure cooker existence of our earlier decades of trying to keep up. And boy, man, it is freeing. It gives you so much more control of your life. So why is that 50 plus kind of age the prime time for selective indifference? How do you get from all that anxiety to this glorious state of selective indifference? The journey into one's 50 often ushers in a period of profound liberation. As I said, it's a time when the cacophony of external expectations begins to fade, replaced by a clearer, more internally guided sense of direction. This isn't just passive aging and it's not just getting older, it's an active recalibration fueled by all this accumulated wisdom, psychological shifts, and often significant life changes. But what drives all this, what's at the forefront of this, is the wisdom of been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Decades of life experience serve as the ultimate, albeit in many cases, harsh teacher. By your 50s, you've witnessed trends ignite and fizzle like fireworks, navigated personal and global crisis. You've seen, the world of politics just repeat itself like a kind of mad merry-go-round. And then you come to that often comforting realization that many of the things that once caused sleepless nights ultimately held little or no long-term significance. There's actual scientific terms for this. This isn't all just waffle from me. This experiential wisdom is complemented by a fascinating psychological shift explained by something called the socio-emotional selective theory, or SST. Yeah, there's an actual term for this. Basically, as your perception of your remaining time changes and becomes more finite, therefore your motivational priorities shift. So as you kind of realize there's finite time, there's a natural inclination to prioritize emotionally meaningful goals and relationships over exploratory activities or superficial connections. And that basically translates into this reduced tolerance, not giving a for drama, inauthenticity, and those energy-draining interactions and arguments. Life becomes much more like a curated mixtape from the 80s. It becomes about just including only the good stuff. Make a mixtape of 1982, the year of hits. Anyway, put your thoughts in the comments down below. Anyway, as I've said before, we're Generation X. We're the resilient generation. We're the latchkey kids. We've learned to be independent, to entertain ourselves and solve problems on our own. There's a thing my kids could learn. We develop an indifference. And could it be that seemingly disaffected whatever attitude of our youth coming back, but now actually being of use now we're older? A sophisticated filtering system develops in your 50s. It becomes a tool for quickly assessing and dismissing things that don't worry our precious time or energy and things that actually matter. Then, of course, there are the midlife catalysts. I'm not talking midlife crisis, I'm talking midlife catalysts. And it's these catalysts in life, these moments in life in our 50s that often accelerate the journey towards that selective indifference. There are significant life events that can force a re-evaluation of priorities. It could be your parents passing away. It could be a major change in your sort of job situation, or you're considering retirement. That realization that traditional corporate climb isn't the sole definition of success. Many of us in our 50s are actively seeking or creating new career paths, now aligned with passion or purpose. We kind of realize we're fed up with the corporate BS. We want to find what our purpose is. We want to follow a passion. And of course, empty nest syndrome. As our kids grow up and leave home, we find ourselves with more time and space. This newfound freedom can be a powerful catalyst for rediscovering personal interests and redirecting energy towards self-focused goals. We're not focused on the kids anymore. We can focus on ourselves. There's this thing that psychologists have in life. It's called the U-shaped curve of happiness, where life satisfaction often dips in our midlife, only to rise again in later years. And it's odd that this not giving a fuck phase is exactly the point that we actively start climbing out of that dip. It's a conscious choice to shed the burdens that contributed to that decline in happiness over a period of time. And now we realize we don't give a fuck about things. We're slowly climbing out of that U-shaped curve. This is no coincidence. It's because we stopped giving a fuck, or more politely, stopped sweating the small stuff. So here's my sort of official Gen X list. First and foremost on the list of no fucks given anymore, other people's unsolicited opinions and drama. There was a time when, a casual remark from a colleague or a passive-aggressive comment from a distant relative could send you into a spiral of self-doubt. After 50, the realization dawns that most opinions are merely projections or reflections of the giver's own baggage rather than an accurate assessment of your life, your energy becomes too valuable a commodity to expend on someone else's negativity, to spend time with a Debbie Downer. Last year, I uninstalled Twitter. Social media just farms outrage. That's what drives the algorithms. They want you to get angry. You see people seething at the slightest thing. Oh, I don't agree. Next up, ditching the exhausting pursuit, as we've talked about here, of keeping up with the Joneses. The TikTok influencers, the Instagram images, the futility of chasing material possessions solely for status. Look at my Ferrari, look at my big house, which is all fake anyway. I don't need any more stuff. My new currency, experiences. That's what I'm trying to invest in now. And meaningful connections, or even just the luxury of an uninterrupted nap. Next up on the list of not giving up about, perfectionism. Oh, it is the thief of joy. This gets ceremoniously booted off the island of concerns. That could do one. Decades spent striving for often unattainable standards in work, in home, in appearance. Getting rid of all that all eventually leads to an appreciation for good enough. Suddenly you have a new mantra. Done is often far better than perfect, especially when perfection comes at a cost of peace or progress. Next up, they and what they think about your life choices, your appearance, your hobbies. It loses all its authority. They don't pay your mortgage. They don't live your life. They don't have your experience, your joys or sorrows. So why did their imagined judgment suddenly hold sway? Whether it's a newfound passion for pottery, a decision to dye your hair a vibrant, if you've got any hair, unconventional colour, design your own t-shirts. Yeah, I do. Because I don't want to look like a basic bitch. I mean, the freedom to pursue one's personal preferences without seeking external approval is truly a hallmark of this wonderful stage in life. Another thing for Gen Xers, especially those hitting their 50s and stuff, is ditching that idea of the outdated societal expectations of aging. You should behave in a certain way. The notion that one should age gracefully, be quietly fading into the background, is particularly offensive to, I'd say, Gen X. This is, after all, the generation that embraced alternative as a way of life, and some still do. So therefore, aging can be approached alternatively, perhaps loudly, joyfully, and with a wardrobe that continues to defy convention and embarrass your kids. A recognition that your 50s is a new stage of life, not to grow old gracefully, but to rediscover your passions, or even drive in a new direction. As you enter your 50s, Sisyphean task of trying to make everyone happy, that can do one as well, all the time. This is finally recognised as the ultimate energy drain that it always was. The focus shifts towards cultivating your own happiness and nurturing the well-being of those who genuinely matter around you. And finally, ditching the idea of regretting the past or fearing the future. While learning from the past mistakes, of course, is valuable, we don't want to do that again, but dwelling on them becomes really unproductive. I had a head teacher in primary school, and he said this quote in assembly I've never forgotten: "The hand that writes, writes on," or something like that. The past is set, it's done. You cannot change it, it's written. There's nothing you can do about it now, so move on. I've kept that phrase in the back of my head ever since I first heard it, and it's something I try to instill into my kids as well. While planning for the future is important, excessive anxiety about the unknown is only going to detract from the present. I find I have a growing capacity to inhabit the current moment, to be in the moment. Some people call it mindfulness, perhaps. I just call it chilling, with a cup of tea in the garden. Recognising that the past is for reflection, yes, and perhaps enjoying some classic tunes or the hits from 1982, the best year in music. The future is inherently uncertain, but today, right now, holds tangible potential for joy and meaning. So concentrate on that. This no f***s given list is also a profoundly pragmatic act of energy conservation. Midlife, or your 50s, whatever, can introduce new stressors, like caring for aging parents, managing health challenges, or career transitions, or retirement, as in my case. Consciously shedding trivial worries is an effective strategy for freeing up vital mental and emotional resources. Resources that you can then redirect towards what truly demands your attention and what genuinely contributes to a fulfilling life. Don't sweat the small stuff. Reallocating your F's, the stuff that actually deserves your energy now. Now, the liberation that comes with selectively withdrawing your from the trivial, it's not an end in itself, right? It's a means to a more fulfilling end. It creates a vacuum, an energetic space that can now be filled with people, ideas, passions that genuinely resonate, that give you joy in life, that matter to you. And I guess hand in hand with authenticity comes that drive for nurturing meaningful connections, you know, your tribe, your vibe, all of that. The priority moves towards relationships that are emotionally gratifying, supportive and genuine. There's a natural pruning of the social network, favouring quality over quantity. Too many connections on Facebook, too many WhatsApp groups. Time to get the social media pruners out, mate. As I said, this stage of life also often ignites a desire for finding or rediscovering purpose and a passion, big or small. Don't have to be grand things. What gives me meaning? This doesn't mean some sort of grandiose world-saving mission or anything like that, which, you know, it can do. Purpose can be found in the small things like mentoring, volunteering, learning a new language, challenging yourself, cooking a difficult recipe. One critical area to reinvest all this newfound energy is prioritising health and well-being, you know. Our bodies are talking, but are we listening? Hopefully we are, finally. The focus shifts from chasing an idealised sort of physical appearance. I mean, sure, I wouldn't have liked Daniel Craig in James Bond or Jason Statham. I missed that boat. The focus shifts from chasing an idealised physical appearance just so you look good in the gym or on Insta to maybe cultivating energy and mobility. They're more important as you get older. Or in my case, just being able to stand still in the face of an aging body. You know, yeah, I want to look good, of course I do, but that's for me, it's for my girlfriend. I want to be healthy to enjoy my go-go years. It's not just about how long you live, it's about how well you live. Integral to this more centered existence, I guess, just cultivating gratitude and practicing self-compassion. Be kind to your past, be kind to your present, and be kind to your future self. Actively appreciating what you have, I guess, rather than fixating on perceived deficits or past regrets. If you do all this, focus on yourself in the now and appreciate that, it will really boost happiness. Finally, and find the joy in simple pleasures. Perfectly brewed cup of coffee, pouring the milk on my latte in the morning and making that perfect feathered pattern. Don't achieve it every day, but I strive for it. You see me in some videos sitting in the garden with a cup of tea, with an empty mind, just listening to the birds or the rustle of the trees. The journey beyond 50, particularly for Gen Xers, I would say, is less about winding down and more about gearing up for a second act. One that is self-written, self-directed, and gloriously unencumbered by the weight of trivial concerns. This is not an ending, right? It's a vibrant new beginning. An opportunity to live more authentically, joyfully, and ultimately with a profound sense of liberation. It's about empowerment, about reclaiming your time, your energy, and your focus for pursuits that genuinely nourish the soul. The best, as they say, may very well be yet to come, and it promises to be significantly less annoying than much of what came before. What outdated anxieties, societal pressures or trivial worries have you joyfully jettisoned from your life since your 50s? Or since your own personal IDGAF epiphany? Share them in the comments down below, of course. Let's inspire each other to kind of lighten our loads. Anyway, thanks for walking and talking with me today. I hope you found this interesting. If you did, then please give the video a thumbs up, give it a like, because I like it, YouTube likes it, and it helps people like you find content just like this. And if you are new to my channel, then I'd really appreciate it if you could give the channel a subscribe and toggle that notification bell, and that way you'll know when I upload videos just like this. And talking of videos just like this, why don't you check out the videos right here? These ones here. I think you'll love them. Thanks for watching.